Hey kiddos, for today's activity, we're gonna paint a fire-breathing dragon. So you're gonna need some paint, paper, and let's go. More precisely, you're gonna need a big piece of paper to protect your table. It can be newspaper, whatever you have around you. A smaller piece of paper to make your dragon drawing. Also a painting palette to mix your paints. So here we're gonna take out our paints and we're gonna take a few colors. We're gonna take some red, yellow, orange, brown, green, black, and white. We're also gonna need a glass of water to rinse our paintbrushes. And we're also gonna need a few of our paintbrushes here and a towel to rinse our fingers. So on our piece of paper, we're gonna start off with our pencil and draw the entire shape of our super freaky dragon. So he's gonna kind of take over the entire place and we're gonna really utilize the sheet of paper from left to right. So we're gonna basically start and have his head kind of open with fire coming out of it, and he's gonna kind of curve his body all throughout and have these like spikes coming out of his back. So let's start with our head here and put the paper down basically and start drawing kind of the lefternmost point. We're gonna kind of draw the lower side of his mouth here and up, open it up a little bit just like that, so it's kind of like a triangle. Curve it in and back out. So we're basically making like the chin, like his muzzle. Awesome. So his mouth is definitely open because he needs to spit out fire. So from the muzzle, you're going to dip down and around and down and around and over. So here we're creating the lower part of his body. So now we're going to take from the upper part of his muzzle, we're going to go up to make his head and his eyes. So there's one eye, two eyes. Make his head, finish it, perfect. And now we're going to do the upper part of his body, which is going to match the exact roundness of the bottom that we just drew. Up and around and finish his tail. Perfect. So this is going to be the shape of our dragon. So now we're going to take our pencil and add some paws. I don't know if we even call it dragon paws. So add 2 lines, some claws, which are definitely nice and sharp. So I've added 4 claws and some nails, which dig into the ground. And then on the other side, we're going to have another paw, so 2 lines sticking out of his body. Make his paw about 4 little claws here, and then we're going to add the nails into each toe. Perfect. So now we need to add his hind legs. So 2 more lines straight down right there. A little bit smaller than his front feet. And add his claws. And then his second hind leg is a little bit further down here. 1, 2, 3, 4 toes, and you can add his claws. Perfect. So now we're going to finish his tail and curve it up. And eventually we're going to make the tail really fiery. It's going to have lots of kind of craziness going around on it. And also on his head. His head is going to have a lot of kind of different feathers and crazy textures and the fire breathing out of his mouth. So he's going to look like a really cool, aggressive dragon. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start painting. So we're going to have the upper half of our scenescape yellow and the bottom green. So let's add a little bit of green here to our paint dispenser palette. Perfect. And then some yellow. Open it up. Put a little bit into your palette. We'll be good to go. So I'm going to use a really kind of wide brush. If you only have one, don't worry. It's just the big one is going to cover more terrain. So drop it into some yellow paint. Gorgeous. And all across the top, just paint right over your dragon. We're going to have this kind of massive yellow sky. Perfect. So paint right over it, left to right, left to right, left to right. You can use the lower half of your workstation to kind of capture any leftover paint. Left to right, looking good. Perfect. Get all your little corners. Make sure all your little white spots are covered. And look, we can still see our dragon underneath, so we're perfect. We're gonna have our reference for when we need to paint him later. Awesome. So our sky is nice and yellow, and now we need to make his grass. So let's clean our paintbrush. Perfect. And grab some green. Perfect. Not too much water. Good to go. Perfect. So now we're going to just kind of ride right along the border of the yellow paint. So we basically have the grass that our dragon is resting on. Back and forth. Perfect. And try not to add too much water or else it'll curl up your paper. Back and forth. Cover all your little white spots. Perfect. So now that our background is done, I'm going to just wipe off my fingers here. And now we're going to draw our dragon. So let's grab a new paintbrush and our orange. I'm going to squeeze in my orange right here. I'm going to need a lot of it because our dragon is so big. Whoop, look at that bubble. Perfect. Close him up. I'm going to take a slightly kind of smaller paintbrush, and I'm going to just basically make his whole body bright orange. A little bit of water. A little bit of orange here. And here we go. I'm going to start it from right above, right there, and work him down. You could make your dragon pretty much any color. You can make him, just as long as the color is different from the background. I think the orange stands out really nicely and he looks kind of fiery. It's going to match nicely with the fire coming out of his mouth. So make sure here, see the orange? I'm kind of just painting right where his muzzle is. So on the lower part and then here on the upper part. So do your best to kind of respect the sketching that we did underneath. So here on the head, there's those two little eyes. Then work your way down with the orange paint all through the body. Wow, I really feel like dragons almost exist. It feels like in so many stories that we read, dragons are always there. And in a lot of kind of Chinese philosophies, they talk about dragons, but there's actually no history of there ever being dragons on the earth. But it's definitely one of my favorite fantastical creatures. It feels almost real, like the way people talk about unicorns or a lot of other creatures. All right. He's starting to look nice and ferocious. Perfect. And if you want to make him a little bit fatter, you don't have to follow your drawing perfectly. It's just there to help you as a reference. So when you paint him, it's much easier. Let's grab a little bit more orange here and just keep working up the tail, which we're then going to make really intense afterwards with a few other paint colors. Awesome. Great. So now we're going to rinse our paintbrush. I'm going to take a slightly smaller one here, rinse it, and use a little red. And with my red, I'm going to work on my dragon's eyes. So I'm just adding a little bit more here. Perfect. Dabble it. Here we go. So basically I'm going to just draw him out like that, just the way we did in our sketch. So here are his horns. Awesome. Kind of droop him down here where his eyes are. Take a little bit more red and start working on the spikes that we're going to have all down his back. So I'm going to make lots of little spikes. So basically like triangles. And if you make them small enough, they'll just fill themselves in with the red paint. Little triangles all down his back. Like tiny little teeth. Makes him look extra ferocious. This dragon is not messing around. All the way down. He almost looks like fire. He breathes it, he looks like it. All the way up his little tail, or actually his enormous tail. Perf. Awesome. So he could also have spikes down his lower side, but most of what we've seen in mythological pictures will have spikes all the way through the upper side. So now what we can do is start working on the flames here. Coming right out of his tail. So I'm almost making like the little like swoopy movement all around and then fill it in with the red paint. So it looks like flames, but it's like a massive fin. And you can use it to kind of wipe away any predators. So now let's clean our up and add some orange details. Perfect, so it looks really quite fiery. And now on his head, we're also gonna add like another little fin, which is gonna make him look really aggressive, almost like a peacock, you know, and it kind of spikes up around you. With some red and some orange. Awesome, our dragon is starting to look really, really fierce. Perfect, so it's almost like a fiery crown. So now we're gonna take our black marker and let's add some details to his face. So we drew him some eyes, but he doesn't have his corneas yet. So let's just draw little circles. Oh, this is not dark enough, so I'm just gonna grab a slightly darker and do it with paint instead. So try it with paint. I'm just using my black paint here to run over the circles for the eyes. A little bit of black paint. If you have a nice skinny brush, this will really help you out. So dab it. You don't want to have too much paint on your brush or else it'll kind of make a mess. So just circle around. Perfect. Great. And then a little dot inside for the eyes. Okay. So now we can start to add some details here. And just kind of outline the entire lower half of our dragon. Because the spikes are helping define him really much on top. So I'm just kind of outlining our entire dragon's belly. All throughout the neck. Grab a little more paint here. And help outline him. Perfect. Up and around his fierce claws. And around his belly. Look at him, look how angry he looks. He looks like a real dragon. Okay, so right alongside all of his claws. Perfect. And keep outlining the rest of his body just underneath. Just like that. This way he's really gonna pop out of the picture. And follow him down. And around his paws, up and over. And down. Looks like he's just hanging out in your backyard. And a little more black. Perfect. A little bit around his head too. Great. So now we can use some of this black paint and make some of these scales all over him. Because dragons have kind of like this scaly, it kind of, I don't know, I can imagine it looking like dinosaur skin. So I'm adding these little kind of scaly dots all over him to show how rough his skin is. Nice and rough all around. Perfect. All up the tail. Little scales, and it really shows kind of the movement of how his skin is kind of bending and curving like a fish. Awesome. Okay, now we need to make him some crazy little teeth. Just finishing on a few details here on his face. Little scales. Perfect. So now I'm grabbing just a fresh new paintbrush after all of that black paint, dipping into my white. A little bit of white, not too much. And let's make him some spiky little teeth. Dragons are definitely hungry. They definitely eat. They need those teeth to munch into some meat. Lots of sharp, sharp teeth. And again, if there's any detail that you would imagine differently on the dragon, it's a fantastical animal, so you can do whatever you want. Okay, but by default, we know that dragons breathe fire. So let's draw a big fire kind of flame coming right out of that mouth. So I'm taking some red paint here, and he's just spitting. He's spitting fire right out of his mouth. I'm adding a little bit of orange here, red and orange, and a bit of yellow just to show how the sparks are extra kind of fiery. So this mixture of red, orange, and yellow. And use your paintbrush to stroke away from the dragon's mouth. So it looks like the fire is really coming right out of his mouth. So the way that you do your brush strokes are really going to show. Great job, you guys. So little guys, here's our ferocious dragon. Mine looks freaky. Look at those crazy colors. I hope you had a great time making it today. Hope to see you soon.